Everyone's up in arms, Christopher Price, and who knows the validity of this, but Diana Rossini, who everyone respects, they says New England Patriots are listening and taking calls for teams looking to move into three, which I would hope that
Yeah.
you were not you were answering the phone. So that's kind of a nothing statement. But here's where it is interesting. Well, GM Elliott Wolf is running point. I'm told Patriots President Jonathan Kraft is heavily involved in the decision making. Does that sound plausible to you?
I'll tell you what I've heard in my conversations with Elliot Wolf over the last few months. I've asked him on multiple occasions, including last Thursday, has anything changed when it comes to you making the number 3 pick? When it comes to you being the guy who pulls the trigger? And he says no. Now, the one thing that kind of left him a little wiggle room the last time I asked that question was that he said, if I believe in strongly in someone and everyone else in the room believes in someone else, then we kind of have to have a conversation. And I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but that was the general gist of what he said, which kind of, plays into their whole idea of collaborate and collaboration and, all of those buzzwords that they've hit on here. But that would really run counter to, and I heard John talk about this before the break. I mean, that would run counter to the message that they put out there over the last few months, saying that, look, the football guys are taking care of the football operations. So look, I have no reason to doubt Diana's report. I know she's a very good reporter. But yeah, I mean, if that's the case, it would be a bad look for the Patriots.
Yeah, and it does run counter to what they said. And also, it kind of takes away the advantages of getting rid of Belichick, wouldn't it? Because you get rid of Belichick, he had this unprecedented amount of power, and he was making a lot of mistakes with personnel. So you get rid of him, ideally to put in people that you believe in that are better at personnel decisions, and then your kid just comes in and starts.
And then you don't believe in them at all.
Yeah, and
you send your kid in there to overmanage
kid
them.
who has no background in football, short of being
just around
the rich son of the owner. Like, why are you making the decisions? So that would run counter. So that would make me nervous as a Patriots fan if that was true.
Yeah, I also think too. I would have been concerned, Fred, if I would have been really concerned if Elliot Wolf hadn't taken such a central role in all of this, hadn't shown up at the pro days, hadn't been the face of the organization, at least in these press conferences. It's clear that he is now kind of moved in. And I think we talked about this right after it happened. He's kind of moved into that void that's been created by the departure of Bill. And so this would really run counter to that. The idea that Jonathan has had kind of a heavy say, at least so far, when it comes to personnel. So look, I think there's a lot of things that can happen. And I think that to your point, when you get rid of a guy like Bill, who was the one voice coming out of the franchise that you knew, you could count on it if he said something or if it was leaked, Bill was the guy behind it. This is the flip side to that, where you're going to get a lot of different possibilities, possibly a lot of different voices. I think there's something to the idea of collaborate and collaboration. Again, kind of those buzzwords that they've hammered home. But I think it's a different matter when you get ownership involved in football decisions.
Yeah, and there has to be some kind of overriding principle to guide how they're going to build this team. And, and the most obvious decision to be made is, are you taking that guy at 3 if you've got him identified and you know who it is, or is this going to be a long term? And as you look at the possibilities, you got to think, all right, it almost has to be ownership to step in and say, if you're not sure, then we're not doing this. And then Elliott and everyone else has to convince them. So I guess my question would be, Christopher, do you think they are convicted in what they're going to do? Do they have the guy identified? And is that what you think is going to end up happening?
I think they're going to take one of the two quarterbacks at 3 unless someone comes at them with a Godfather-style offer.
All right, I do want to discuss this. All right, so what? So there was another thing, like a Bryce Young type offer, which was, oh Jesus Christ, DJ Moore, the first that year, the first this year, a second. It was multiple firsts, but you wanted just to swap. and then DJ Moore first and a second. Anyway, regardless, it was a lot. But I'm going to ask you, Christopher Price, your opinion, not what you think they're going to do. But if you were the GM of the team, what would it take for you to say you like Mayor Daniels, right? Like, let's just assume, which you probably do. What would it take you to move out of 3? What would be an offer sufficient to you to move out of 3, or is there one?
At least 3 first rounders. Now, if you want to look at Minnesota for an example, you could look at Minnesota and see.
We lost.
Sorry.
No,
Nope. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I think if you're looking at the Minnesota example for the Minnesota reported proposal, 11-23, I would not do it for just 11-23. I would do it for 11-23, maybe their first round next year, or a player, for example. I think that's the starting point, and I think you might be able to wait out Minnesota, until Thursday night, and have that conversation with them. But I wouldn't do it for anything less ultimately than 3 first round picks.
Okay, but and John has what Carolina gave up, but I do want to say this is that here's the thinking: if you get 11-23, well, 11's just for 3, so that's you've lost a commodity there. You're picking up a late first round pick, and for what? I mean, I don't know what you're getting there. Like, you're certainly not getting an elite talent and an elite position. And then next year, Minnesota's not going to be bad, so it's going to be another late first round pick.
But even if Minnesota is bad, there's no guarantee there's going to be a quarterback sitting there for you to take next year.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, I would theoretically then use, if you went 11-23 and their first round next year, I would use 11. And that's with the understanding that you don't love either May or Daniels.
Right.
You could say, you could look at Michael Penix, or, God forgive me for saying this, but J.J. McCarthy at 11, and then you could say, all right, that's our guy.
Yeah,
that's our guy at 11.
And if J.J. McCarthy's there at 11, and then you're rolling the dice that you can get J.J. McCarthy at 11, which you might not be able to. Yes, John.
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, the compensation for the number 1 overall pick, and Carolina traded up from 9 to get it. So for dealing the number 1 overall pick, the Bears got pick 9, pick 61, a first rounder in 2024, a second rounder in 2025, and DJ Moore.
Okay.
That was the compensation. 4 draft picks, 4 high draft picks, and DJ Moore. And the other thing is, Chris, is the narrative that what if Washington stuns everyone and takes Drake May at 2, and then you have Jalen Daniels sitting there at 3, then you might get that Godfather offer. And that's when things get interesting.
John, if that happens, I take the card and run to the podium with Jaden Daniels' name on it. I
would agree with you, by the way.
I like Drake May. I love Jaden Daniels.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just do this exercise. What if Chicago keeps that pick and takes C.J. Stroud? Now Chicago has their quarterback. They don't have, and so Caleb Williams might be a great quarterback. C.J. Stroud is a great quarterback. So they could have kept the number 1 pick and taken C.J. Stroud. And then, so you understand what I'm saying? So just, they won the trade in that it looks like Bryce Young, right now, that looks like they won the trade, right?
Yeah.
But Bryce Young's got to continue to not be good. Caleb Williams has got to be a better quarterback than C.J. Stroud, really. If you wanted to, 10,000 foot view it, there was an opportunity for Chicago to stay and take a kid that looks like he's going to be an elite quarterback, and they didn't do it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I think Caleb Williams is the closest thing to a sure thing at the quarterback.
I agree. And it's very fortunate. And they might have even factored in Caleb Williams' ability when they made the trade. They might have even figured that into it. They might have said, well, next year, because we all knew about Caleb Williams going into this year. All right. Well,
right. Which and just real quickly, which is why there is no talk of a Godfather offer for Caleb Williams. If he is the guy, and he is identified as the guy by your team and every other team, there's no offer. I heard Felger say this yesterday. I couldn't agree more. There's no offer you should consider if the guy is there and that's the guy to quarterback your team for years in the future. You can come with the most outrageous offer there's ever been on a draft day, and the answer is no.
Well, I told you the GM said, they were asked a couple months ago, would you trade out for Caleb Williams? And they said no, because you could give me 5 picks and I could get a Hall of Famer with all 5 of those picks. And if I don't have a quarterback, I'm not going to win.
Right.
Yeah. Caleb Williams is the closest thing in this draft to Patrick Mahomes. I swear to you, he's the surest of sure things, man. And if there was ever a, the Patriots last year talked about, I know there was a lot of talk tanking and, moving up. He would have been the only guy where, you would have pushed all your chips in the middle of the table for. The rest of the guys, I think, like I said, I think Jaden Daniels is a home run pick. I think he would fit very nicely here in New England. I think it'd be a great move. But Caleb Williams is the guy.
Yeah, and it's Chris, that's the thing is if you hear from every scout, like everything from his mechanics to his ability,
Yeah.
I mean everything is just off the charts.
I think Fred, I think you deserve a lot of credit today. You haven't once mentioned Zach Wilson going to the Broncos. Do you want to squeeze it in here while we got Price on the phone?
I mean, Christopher Price. I mean, the news that shook the NFL. I mean,
Right.
There's the number 2. What a draft class.
Boy, that 2021 draft class, man.
Yeah.
Not so hot. Not so great.
Not so great. Well, maybe Trevor Lawrence. But Trevor Lawrence was a can't miss kid. So maybe
He was.
He's the only one left, right? Of those top 5.
Oh,
Still in the same place.
He's the only one in the same place. That's true. Listen, Zach Wilson's got a hell of an arm. Maybe. Do you see that quarterback room in Denver? Hachi Machi.
Oh, boy.
I tell you what,
stinks.
man. I texted a friend in Denver who covers the Broncos yesterday, and he texted back, really? Like really? That's so. I mean, that's you think if you're a Patriots fan there, but for the grace of God, right? You look at a Denver quarterback room that looks like that, and they have no chance at one of the top 3 guys. And
wait till they add Bo Nix, then it'll really get fun.
Oh boy, I'll tell you this is that because I was in the car with my son and we were doing the exercise because he goes, Zach Wilson, and I'm like, yeah. And we were trying. I couldn't remember if Denver had Justin Fields or if Pittsburgh had Justin Fields. And I'm like, I don't think Denver has Justin Fields.
No.
And I'm like, I can't tell you who the other 2 quarterbacks in that room are. And then we looked it up, and I was like, Hachi Machi.
Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham. Oh boy, God bless him.
All right, Christopher Price, thank you for the time, sir. Read him in the Boston Globe. We appreciate it.